I'm going to kick things off with a discussion around the state of our industry. It's an unscripted, informal discussion. Sima is going to lead it, and I'm going to welcome Katie, Ryan, Steve, and Armen to the stage to get us started. So welcome, everybody, and we're looking forward to a really great couple of days.
Before we start, I thought each of us could just give ours a small intro as to who we are and what you do. Ryan.
Hi, everybody. My name is Ryan. I'm the president at Zappi. I oversee our commercial operations, our operations, and product and engineering groups.
Steve.
Steve Schlesinger, CEO of Schlesinger Group, mostly focused on strategy, acquisitions, developing the business for the future.
Armen.
Hi everyone, my name is Armen Adjemian. I am a co-founder and CEO of DISQO, mostly involved with strategy and go-to-market.
And I'm Katie Grosh, Chief Customer Officer at Suzy. I oversee the sales, customer success, and our full-service Center of Excellence team.
And I'm Sima Vasa. I'm the co-founder of Paradigm Sample and also CEO of Infinity Squared Ventures. And I also do investment banking through Oberon Securities. So let's talk about talent. The war on talent. We're all struggling with it. We're all trying to figure out how to acquire talent, hire talent, and also retain talent. What are some of the challenges that you guys see in doing that today?
Want to go first, Steve?
Yeah, sure.
It's a passion point for you.
Yeah. Absolutely. Right, exactly. Thank God for the cocktails.
This will get more fun as the
By the way,
cocktails go down.
this is supposed to like mirror a conversation at cocktail hour.
Right,
Hence the
exactly.
cocktails.
Exactly.
So Ted, we're going to need another drink in a minute.
Just getting started. Yeah, so I mean, listen, I think that, you'll hear a lot of conversations, today, tomorrow, and probably have for a while, and will for a while, around technology and automation and so many wonderful things. But at the end of the day, it's the talent that really generates the value of the business and helps the business move forward. Look, it's a challenge. I mean, there's a lot of, we're all hiring for the most part. We're all looking to find the people with experiences. I think you have to be more creative than you've ever been in terms of how to attract people in. One of the things we look at, pretty regularly is acquisitions as a form of hiring. The way to get talent, people who can complement our business and use that as a tool as well. But I think one of the things that's interesting today is really around the fact that there's a lot of money in our industry, believe it or not. There's a lot of venture money, there's a lot of investment coming in, and with that becomes a lot of excitement, but the excitement also creates higher salaries, bigger compensation programs, different ways of looking at how you compensate people. And I actually think it's a good thing, because I think it forces creativity and it makes us all think harder about what talent is really important for us to drive sort of the next chapter of the business. Katie, what do you think?
Yeah, we have hired, I joined Suzy about 2 years ago almost. I was number 67 and we're now 300. And so hiring has been almost like a full-time job for me. Yeah. And I think part of that is we need people with experience, but we also need people with a different point of view, because if you hire the people who've always done it, we're going to build a product and a solution that is the way everyone's always done it. So we've tried to also look outside the box and look at some industries that are kind of similar. Especially on the engineering team, we have some people who've joined us from Ticketmaster, for example. We just had an astrophysicist join us a couple of weeks ago on the engineering team as well, to try and get lots of different experiences. And on my services side of the house, people from ad agencies, media agencies, and so on, so trying to get a blend of talent to get creative.
What about different populations? Like right, there's groups that we all know are tried and proven, but there's groups that still struggle to, like you and I've talked about it, like I don't know how parents raise children and work.
Yeah.
Is there any creative solutioning around that?
Yeah, I think it's about, working from home I think has really helped.
Yes.
Females in the workplace. Yep. I have a significant amount of mothers and new mothers in my team as well. I think for the first time, and actually two of the females who recently went on maternity leave said to me, I didn't see a way I could go on maternity leave in the past and still sell and still travel, et cetera. And I think because of the kind of halt on client facing travel, they were able to see a path to motherhood that maybe they didn't see in the past. And likewise, a lot of the females in my team have said that their husbands have been able to really step in because they're not commuting and traveling as well.
Yeah.
So it's been a much more balanced kind of at-home life. But I praise all the parents in the room. I do not have children and don't envy the parents.
Armen.
I have 3.
Sorry about that.
So yeah, 3, and they're all young. So it's definitely, I think, personally,
How old's your oldest?
12, 10, and 3.
Wow.
So definitely COVID was an interesting experience, right? I think at least the early parts of COVID when I was home. And then I left the house because I wouldn't get anything done. All 3 kids were home and we had work to do. So it was definitely, for me, it was tough. But I think when I talk to a lot of our team and our people, the flexibility to really be able to be wherever has made a big difference in their life, right? So, and we've really embraced. I think we've been people-centric from like 10 people. We were highly motivated by building the best team because we believe that at the end of the day, long-term, you win if you have the best team. If you don't, then you don't win, or you don't win as much or as big. So we've been very people-centric across time. And at the same time, I think being able to hire remotely gave us that much more ability to hire faster. Hire
Armen, how many people are you now?
We are right about 500 now.
Wow.
So I think the group would love to hear what it's been like going from 10 to 500 in terms of leading that many people and the challenges and how you've had to change.
So yeah, I mean, I think Steve, great question. Thanks for bringing it up.
I'm supposed to.
Yes, thank you.
That's part of the session. It absolutely feels, okay, so you're constantly in interviews, right? And I think, especially last year was complicated because we brought on north of 200 people and we were a 200-person org. So we doubled last year, and that was extremely challenging given the environment the entire business was in. So that was I want to say probably thinking about scaling talent, especially when you're scaling fast and you need the experience. It's very hard to hire and train because you have no programs, you have no processes for training. You have to build all of those as well over time. I think it's interesting when we take a look at where the world is today, and at least the first 2 quarters, I think we'll be experiencing similar challenges from a perspective of being able to hire at the speed and the scale you want. The way the world is turning today, however, I think the back half of this year, some of that might start changing. I think a lot of the early signals when we talk to some of the general kind of investor pool or other CEOs, I think people are starting to take a look at what's going on, in the broader kind of economic scene, and starting to understand what does that mean a quarter out, 2 quarters out. So even though it's been tough, and I think you as an organization have to build the right type of culture to be able to and the structure to hire, I think 6 months out, 9 months out, will be somewhat in a different scenario.
You know, let's segue to that for a second, if you don't mind. So
I was setting you up.
I know, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I think I can hit this one. Sima, you're in the banking community, you do a lot of advisory work. What have you heard over the last quarter or 2 related to sort of, the macroeconomic conditions, the sort of the state of investors and/or capital in the market, and how people might be thinking about, transactions even?
Yeah, so I mean, last year was crazy, right? We saw a ton of activity. I think people say it was a frothy market, right? Like people, there was so much pent-up demand in terms of investment that it was kind of frantic. And I think now, depending on your outlook in terms of, are we in a recession? Are we going to be in a recession? I think that there's a little bit more scrutiny around investments. In fact, even kind of if a U.S. company is buying an international company, the exchange rate fluctuation is impacting valuation, right? You put a valuation out there and you say, wait, the dollar against the euro is 20% less. So I think it's a little bit more cautious. I don't think we're at the end. Like, I don't think it's completely, exponential change, but it definitely is. The timing is feeling like there's a little bit more realistic expectations versus last year.
Listen, I know that you have raised plenty of money in the past. I know that you're, probably in that area again.
Yeah.
How are you thinking about it in terms of, sort of conditions and, what the needs are for Zappi?
Well, I mean, I think there's an underutilized instrument in debt financing that we've
Yes.
gotten a lot of traction from in the last several years. And if you're growing, that's a really useful vehicle. So
Yeah.
and you can keep your cap table relatively clean. But yeah, I think there's still money and they need to place
Sure.
investments, but the valuations are not as insane as they probably were 6 months ago.
Yep.
What's interesting, to link it back to our first topic, is what happens when a lot of the 15x multiple companies start missing numbers. I mean, what I've seen in the last year is engineers cost about 40% more and salespeople cost about 40% more. Is that sustainable if we enter into a little bit of a down
I
market?
do worry about that.
Yeah.
I worry a lot. Like, we're putting premium salaries out there, and you don't make numbers, we're going to deal with a lot of unemployment or a lot
Yeah.
of tough choices.
But I'll also say that, especially being a New York tech firm, my sellers' rents have doubled and quadrupled and
Yeah,
tripled.
inflation's insane.
And their student loans are crazy. And I'm like, you know what, yes, these salaries seem very high, but at the same time, their outgoings are incredibly high also, especially those that stayed in Manhattan.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it's all about performance, right? I mean, the investment's about performance, the talent's about performance, you're measuring against these things, and ultimately, if it works, it's great, it's easy to pay, and it's easy to have success. And if it doesn't, there's painful decisions that come with it.
To your point, like if a business is performing now when things aren't just straight bull market,
Right.
that's more attractive to somebody. They want to be part of that.
Well, I think it's performance, but then there's this intangible thing of culture. And I think that's really hard to maintain as you go through. When times are really good, culture is a little bit easy because it's like
sure.
revenue and money solves all ails. But as you think about culture, potentially when things are tough, how do you maintain that, and how do you manage to it?
I mean, for me, like that's so we have a 2.5% voluntary attrition, which I'm really proud of, given the state of things.
Sure.
You just have to create a good environment, hire great people, and treat them like adults.
Yeah.
So I'm not telling you when to work and how to work and where to work. We're going to hire people that have skills that can be adaptable to change, and ultimately provide them a good place to work. But if they decide that their career is best off somewhere else, that's great.
You're okay.
It's all good. I mean, I think there's a shift in employment where perhaps in earlier generations we felt as though our employees owed us something. I personally don't operate with that. They invest their time in me and I pay them for their service, and it's a wonderful thing. And hopefully I can create an environment for them that they can grow. But ultimately, I mean, I love seeing people go on to greater things. I think it's exciting.
The other part I think about culture, Sima, is being able to communicate with your team, with your company, as these things start happening, right? So I think part of it is making sure you're constantly, very openly bring the conversations that you're having across your leadership team, your board team, and be able to communicate that, because I think the best way of really understanding and making sure that your organization, your culture is being maintained is you can transparently talk about some of these hardships that maybe are not here, but all right, we're potentially sitting back and thinking what might happen 6 months from now. What do we do now so that we're in a better situation to take care of all of our people, right, 6 months from now? So how do we make different decisions today and in the next quarter that have a significant impact, Q1 of next year?
And I think it's not just about maintaining culture, but changing culture over time as well. When I first started, we were a scrappy startup that nobody had even heard of before. And we've had to change. We've had to adapt. We're not a scrappy startup anymore. We have to have process. We have Jira ticketing systems. We have onboarding programs and expectations that need to be set. Whereas previously, it was a little scrappier. And so we've had to take people along that journey as like the culture is going to change. We are going to have to grow up. We can't just slack someone for help. We need a ticketing system. We need to make sure that we're following processes so we can scale.
But no offense to the three of you, you have it easy. I mean, I have a business.
Does anybody have a violin for him? Is that one in the back?
I have a culture.
You're right, Steve.
I have a culture.
I empathize with you.
Yeah, I have a culture of 20 companies that are amalgamated together that all came with a culture. and not one culture reigns. It's really the combination of all of them, which creates a completely different dynamic, good, bad, or otherwise. I think it's, I like it, I love it, it's what I signed up for.
Complex.
But it's complex, and no different than, when you're 10 people and then you're 500, or you're 300 or 400 versus less, it's different. But, it's one of the things that I think you have to take really good care of, and there isn't one simple answer to it. It's different with every company that comes in. It's different with the types of people that stay and some that maybe don't stay, and why that exists. And for me, I think the hardest part is, as most leaders do, I take it personally.
Yeah.
I want it to be successful. I want it to work. And when it doesn't work, it feels like a sense of failure. But I think most important is, to figure out why it didn't work, to understand what I could have done differently, or how the company could have functioned differently, and then ultimately do it the next time maybe a little bit better.
Here's a question. Have you ever turned down a deal because it wasn't a good cultural fit?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's how critical it is, right?
Actually,
the financials are good growth, whatever, good product, market fit, everything else.
Culture is the number one criteria, actually. Culture and people are the number one criteria, because if those don't work, it doesn't matter how good everything else is, it's going to fail.
I think people underestimate that.
Yeah.
I think even, so it's public information now. We just recently made an acquisition, but fundamentally the number one thing we looked for and made sure existed was that ability to have shared values, the ability to make sure that we can work with this team and this team can work with us, because it doesn't mean we're perfect, it's just, right? And we looked at a number of different companies, and by far that was the one that made us feel a lot more comfortable about our future success. So it is, we're a newbie. Steve is an expert on this because you've seen probably all different sides of this. But you talk to enough people, and you think about how you are able to add to your team. By far, people, right? Again, best teams win.
I like what you say, Katie, though, because it's not about staying still and culture. I think culture fit is a really outdated term. So in all 20 of those acquisitions, there's something added to the Schlesinger fabric, I would assume.
Absolutely.
It changes a constant. So like anybody who thinks we're going to stay still, I mean, they're going to be in trouble.
Right.
So it's really about, I think it comes down to values.
Yeah.
A culture fit, right? It's really, do you have shared values? In how you work, and how you behave, in how you collaborate. And I think those are the things that really make every single one of Steve's acquisitions successful or not. Right?
I did have one really bad one.
Yeah.
And it was all a people culture thing.
Good batting average. It's a good batting average.
Yes, exactly. Right, I'm fine with it. And I learned a lot from it too. So.
Let's talk about the industry. I think on this stage there's some debate about understanding respondent experience, and do we care, do we not care? Thoughts?
Since you want me to,
Yeah, I'm going right for,
I'm supposed
right
to
for
be
you,
the
Ryan.
provocator. So I'm going to tell everybody a story. I was trying to get some heads of insights to come, and they said, I don't want to go and talk about sample. And I was like, wow, that sucks. Why? And they were like, I want to talk about first-party data. I want to talk about connecting what people do with what they say. And it was an interesting insight for me, because I have empathy for the tension of who are the people we're actually surveying? Are they real? But on some level, it's like table stakes, and we're still talking about it. And so I think there's a lot of moves we need to make that not the conversation. But until it isn't, it isn't. But I mean, ultimately, the brands are expecting all of us to deliver high quality products to them that they can trust and make multi-million-dollar decisions on. And so, I mean, one person was like, I'm not coming there to tell you how to govern getting the access to consumers who buy cheeseburgers. Like, I'm all set.
Yeah.
And so I think that that's really interesting. And if we're still supporting 45-minute conjoint surveys, shame on us. Like, I mean, we can't be doing shit like that. People don't have attention spans for more than 7 minutes in this. And there's also a lot of other ways to make money on the internet than when we all started doing online sample in 2008 or whatever it was, 99 even probably. So yeah, I have empathy for both sides, but I think we have to execute some things quickly. But in the same breath, I mean, this industry defined representative sample as age, gender, and income. And I mean, I've seen a lot of data, like we're not getting African Americans, we're not getting Hispanics. And so there's a huge problem there of some basic things that when you really open up the hood, it's like, oh crap, that's what's actually happening here.
Yeah, and I'd agree with Ryan, having spent most of my career at panel companies, selling to market research agencies, to then dealing with brands directly for one of the first times in my career. They don't care about incidence rate. They care about quality, but they assume you've taken care of it. That's why they're buying from you. So I haven't had a single conversation over CPIs or incidence rate or quality in almost 2 years now. To your point on representative sample, what they actually care about is this the buyers of my product? And so we're talking a lot more about segmentation, updating typing tools on a far more frequent basis. Segmentation work shouldn't take 9 months and 50-minute long surveys to then find your segments that are probably out of date 9 months later. It's about keeping that fresh and who's today's buyers, how has that changed over the next quarter, and keeping that fresh as well. And the sample sizes don't need to be 5,000 completes
But you
either.
guys manage, right? You have your own panel,
Yeah.
so you manage the experience.
So we care very much. We have two
Right.
sides to the business.
I think that's really important to know, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
We have an audience team who takes care of that side,
Yeah.
but it's rare that the client asks, but we, of course, have to take care of it.
And we buy sample.
Right.
And the thing that makes me angry is 50% of our data science team's time is fighting bots and liars. And it's like, I'd much rather be doing really advanced analytics, cool things with data, but I can't because there's just a lot of noise. And it's a significant percentage of our cost base that's just policing all day.
Yeah.
So I think there are two categories. We think about customer experience or member experience or panelist experience. I think you have Suzy's, Zappi's in the world, which probably represent 1% of the entire addressable market. And then you have...
We'll change that though, don't worry.
That's what market you're looking at.
Cheers to that.
That's the idea. That's exactly what you're doing, right? Which is great. And at Suzy, your average question is what? 5 questions, 10 questions. This is not.
You control that.
This is not the rest of this world. So when we think about customer experience, I think a vast majority of member experience is atrocious. And this, I think this industry is shifting. You're seeing a lot of tech companies and you're seeing a lot of investments. But fundamentally, I think I was having lunch with a colleague, and the industry is constrained by audience, right? If you look at what, as a company, you're able to do, if you had 10 times, 10x, 20x, 50x sample, you would, right? Any company would significantly improve their margins, be able to create better products, and be able to take to market a lot of innovative solutions. But bottom line is, it is constrained with audience, and that challenge is 5-6 years ago, when we were attending SampleCon, I was naive enough thinking it'll change. It's not going to change. It's really I think for us, we think it's a supply-demand curve. As long as there's supply, demand doesn't really care. As soon as supply goes away, demand will care, meaning improving member experience, improving survey experience.
Can I challenge you there?
Yeah.
So I think part of the reason, and I was just talking
Now it's getting real.
I got a question.
We're about halfway through the cocktail now. Let's go.
I was just talking to Andrew Welch from NetQuest. I actually remember him being sat on this stage probably 5 years ago now, where he was talking about it's not a supply-demand problem. It's a trust in each other's data problem. So the reason that Suzy can have a 5 to 6 question survey is because we don't ask age, gender, region, ethnicity. We already know that information. And every single panel company has, when I worked at Cint, we had 300 data points per person.
Correct.
Yet when we sent that person to through an API or any other tool, once again, they asked age, gender, region, ethnicity. Do you own a pet? What foods do you eat? Cint already knew that information. When I worked at Cluna already knew that information. So I think it's a trust between the data sets issue. We could have solved this problem a long time ago if we just transfer the data on the API.
Yeah, except the difference is with Suzy is that now it's not right. It's that you sell to brands. You can do that. Again, a vast majority of, I think, reading reports, whatever, the sampled industry is roughly about a $2 to $3 billion market size, right? That represents, again, probably less than 1% of the industry. So at scale, the macro issue is that most companies that create solutions for people to share data, right, they don't interact with the brands directly. Hence, that will probably not change, for a long period of time. And so it's an ecosystem issue.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is you're still, right, I think the general, again, you look at Cint, who's the largest exchange and probably the global leader at this point in all of this. The average conversion rate and LOI hasn't changed much. And if you ask an individual, what is the number one reason you leave? The number one answer is because I got disqualified from the study.
I saw Arian at, sorry, just really quick. I saw Arian from Pure Spectrum at IAX a few weeks ago, and she actually showed me data that suggests LOIs are going down. It's slow, but they are going down, at least from their exchange.
But the three of you guys have vertically integrated, right? So you get to, with your acquisition, you're with both brands. So you guys actually get to control that experience with the brand. You're talking to the brands, you're saying what's acceptable, and then controlling the respondent experience in the ecosystem. There's a whole nother population that I think, Steve, you're dealing with as well, in that you can't necessarily control the survey experience with the respondent. And that's a huge part of the market, right? And
That is a vast majority of the market.
Did I use the F word?
sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
We're fucked. I mean, if you really think about it, I mean, you're right. The end clients don't necessarily care, but we all care because it's our lifeline. And it's really hard to make movement when the ultimate buyer has an expectation, which is absolutely accurate, and they should. They should care about, quality, but they can assume that it's table stakes. But at the same time, we've got, no ability to police what we do as a industry. Hence, it's the Wild West out there, and you've got all different kinds of things happening. And, not for nothing, it's the people that matter. Without the respondents, we got nothing. So, it's really thank you. Was that standing ovation?
It was sitting, but it was good.
Okay, SampleCon.
That tracks? Yes. All right.
I think that we've seen these topics come up in the past. There was a whole big run on this, and I think it was maybe the 90s, early 2000s with Bob Lederer, who came out and had all kinds of quality initiatives going with P&G and so on. And you can make an argument that we all should wake up a little bit and really take this seriously, because if those issues were being talked about then, think about the wear and tear on people today in terms of their time.
Stephen, I'll give you a real issue. Recently, the Insights Association fought really hard to make sure a specific law does not pass in California.
Yeah.
Right? That makes it extremely hard for almost everybody in this room to function or do business.
We're in it with you.
Yeah.
And so if we don't start actually taking care of this issue at an industry level, regulation is around the corner. We're seeing it in multiple different states, right? And if we didn't pass this time, it'll pass a couple of years from now or whatnot. But the fact of the matter is the average, right, like even if you're paying 50 cents for 15 minutes, it doesn't scale. There is no unit economics that allows that to scale. And regulation, whether it's California or some other state, it's already starting to happen. So this is a much bigger issue that creates long-term kind of real risk that I think as an industry we almost have to pay attention to.
I'm just going to challenge one more.
I
time
want to challenge too. But you go first.
Again, if you store, and I'm not a blockchain person, but if you just store the information against the respondent, every question they qualify out of is a data point you can use for the future also. So if you pay respondents for every single individual question they answer, charge your client for each individual question they are asking, and then be able to target back to what they said they don't do. I don't own a dog. Great, I can target you later on the not owning a dog. So therefore I'm paying you for answering that pet ownership question, because I know that in the future you're not a dog.
So here's the
We
thing.
need to store that data with the
Completely
respondent.
agree. We store it. You were at Cint. Did that happen?
We stored it, but there was no way to transfer.
Was there a way to operationalize that? Because we can
I
talk
take
about
Cint's data all the time from Cint.
Yeah,
All the time we take their variables. We buy
exactly.
Cint
We could pass as many variables along on the link as possible, which could have included all 300.
It goes back to your concept of trust.
Yeah,
Right.
You just
Like
got to trust that we screen dog owners
Correct,
correctly
yeah.
so that Ryan could get dog owners.
That's right.
Have you done anything around sort of democratizing the data a little bit more in terms of the actual panelists themselves, like really thinking about making them your partner in the experience, you know, creating a monetary benefit, a true profit share with them.
Yeah, we call them members. So
Right.
first of all, we call them members and we give them information back about themselves all the time.
Right, but
And sometimes that's just, you answered 300 questions this year, isn't that fantastic? And you took part in this many interviews and so on. But yeah, a data dividend. It's,
Need another round. All right.
I think the word data dividend.
Two things I want to say. The first is, this is SampleCon. So why isn't this group of people sitting down saying, let's stop doing long surveys, let's stop selling crap, let's increase the price on the, like, let's be honest, everybody in this room does business with each other. It's one of the more incestuous industries ever. So why don't we put some standards in place and stop doing this crap? The second thing is, while P&G is the only brand who ever shows up to these things, appreciate you for that, by the way. What I've been hearing is, and it's true, Procter comes to all these things and the rest of the brands don't seem to give a crap, which is sort of scary. But what I have been hearing is, everybody is willing to pay more. So I don't know why we felt the need to make a respondent worth $1, but if we can't get real people for $1, I mean, I think we need to brace ourselves for some price inflation. And I personally would be willing to pay it because I can push it up the supply chain if I'm getting good stuff back.
Ted, make note, Ryan.
Well, Ted, I'm still waiting for my vodka soda. I'm just kidding with you.
Yeah, I think that's where it's going. I think overall, we have to, I mean, I think this, in fact, I think this conference was started to do some of that, right?
Yeah.
And it's 9 years, there's still time.
Yeah.
There's still time.
Ultimately, companies are investing in building assets, right? And you can't treat your asset like shit, right?
Well, you're seeing it, right? I mean, even with the recent acquisition of QME with Kantar, right? This is a sign of saying, for large companies, in order for you to scale, you have to have a sustainable source of audience. Otherwise, it just doesn't scale.
But, you know, it just brings me back to, Armen, you say 9 years, like time.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, it's, you know, we're against that clock all the time. You know, when you really think about how fast things are moving, the expectations of our clients or our investors for that matter, and, you know, and how we really look at how quick we get these things done, whether we're doing them individually or as an industry. You know, because what will happen is either someone will eat our lunch or something will eat our lunch. And then all of a sudden, we're going to be in a very different conversation than we are today.
Yeah.
So that's what worries me.
So it's happening. That's happening as well. One of the largest retailers in the US is building an actual SaaS-based, software-based research product, launching, right? Yeah. We'll start seeing that in the next few months. It's happening. It's going to happen, right? It's gonna. It's so. If you're a retailer, what do you have? You have a lot of people, give you a lot of data. Best yet, not only they give you transaction data, they give you search data, and now they're going to be able to participate in surveys. Guess what? It is happening. It's happening now, and I think this is a real challenge for the industry, because these large retailers or anybody who has a kind of an innate audience that they're able to provide great value is going to come up with a much better model.
And there's a lot more tools for them to use in relation to using that asset.
Steve, who do you worry about as it relates to a category of companies or I would just say category of companies or a specific company in itself? When you wake up in the middle of the night, you're like, crud, I can't believe I got to deal with this category of company. What keeps you up at night?
What keeps me up at night? So, you know, I think about it, the people are on the stage with me. So, you know, Zappi, you know, hasn't been around that long. Suzy has been around less. You know, Armen's been at this game not for that long a time. So you think about, these are 3 companies that have had significant growth and are very successful in a very short period of time. I've been doing this for 30-some years, and the business has been around for longer.
Yeah.
So if you think about it, what worries me is what I don't see.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't see these guys 10 years ago, and now they're here on the stage and they represent a large amount of revenue. So who's going to be on the sage in 3 years from now or 5 years from now? And by the way, like, you can make an argument that the path from startup to really great success is a lot faster now. So what might have taken 5 years or 10 years to develop could be happening now in a much shorter period of time. So, it's like, where are my blind spots? What am I not seeing?
What don't you know?
What don't I know?
Yeah.
And by the way, it's going to be outside of this room.
Yeah.
Like this room is great. This is really informative, but like the people that are going to come in and cut out my legs are probably sitting somewhere else. And that's the truth.
Pretty.
I'm from Jersey.
That's why you're boxing.
That's what we think about.
That's why you're boxing.
Sopranos.
Exactly.
How about you guys? What do you guys worry about?
TikTok, Twitter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
People who take time and attention from respondents.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think similarly, we believe that, and we look at the number one bottleneck for our growth is the user, the member. Right? So we think about how things that are happening in their life change that affect their attention span. Right? We measure it. We look at. Similarly, we think about how are we able to create better value for them every single day. So for us, it's being able to kind of sit across the entire kind of vertical chain. We always gravitate to the member experience because that's what drives growth.
So Mike probably zoomed in a little bit more. I'm worried about who wins the data war inside of big businesses. So overnight now, 67% of most companies' media spend is done programmatically.
Yeah.
Most consumer insights departments are still analog, and they're disconnected from a lot of whatever buzzword you want to use, experience management, performance optimization, what have you. And then concurrently, there's all these new solutions. And so you're asking an insights manager who's overworked, under-resourced, to figure out how to use technology to do their job and then be super strategic.
Yeah.
And those things are at odds. Like they're not supported. So McKinsey comes in and says to insert major company here's name, digitally transform. And then some insights manager's like, I got to go buy Suzy.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to use it. And luckily, Katie will help me. And oh shit, now I got to go meet with the CMO. And so while that's happening, there's no support. But the conversation we were having about sample and data is the biggest thing for me. If we can connect what people do with what they say, we only need to ask them 2 questions. But we're not thinking about that really as an industry, and that troubles me. So I worry about what does an insights department look like in 5 years. I mean, how many businesses in the last 6 months have down-leveled all their VPs? There's a few famous ones that happened in New York City, and a lot of people who were long and senior in their career are now like, oh crap, what do I do?
A question on that, like who's driving that decision in your mind? Like in terms of that transformational change or even just the idea of doing it differently?
Well, I think a lot of CEOs are, if you read a lot of earnings reports, they're saying consumer intimacy and they're expecting somebody to help. I mean, I've interestingly seen, like, I think what Steph Gans at Pepsi's done, I mean, he's not an insights guy. He's a marketing guy. They brought him in to blow up the whole department, and he's digitally transformed him. What has he done? He's built a tech enablement team and then a super team of insights professionals that are actually thinking. But it seems like it's mostly CMO, chief growth officer level. But a lot of VPs of insights were insights managers that got promoted a bunch of times and haven't been invested in terms of skill development.
And they're at a loss, right? The people who are going through retailers and third-party distribution versus direct-to-consumer brands, right? So
Absolutely.
the need to transform and to get move faster, I think that's the impetus to a lot of change within these traditional insights.
Well, let's be real. When Xaxis blew up and everything started being programmatic, we were trying to decide if we were going to use software to do our jobs.
Right.
Yeah.
I would never touch. Like that was 2015 in
Yeah.
this industry, and so we lost a lot of space. I
Yes.
think.
Yeah, and Ryan, to your point, I think there's companies like PepsiCo who have done an amazing job of starting from the top down and enabling everybody. And Stefan Gans has always said, I am here to create global might for the local fight to help those people. There are other companies where and we face it every day, where the C-level, the SEP level are buying a tool like ours and handing it over to that insights manager who has never written a survey, never programmed a survey, and we hear every day, I didn't get to where I am in my career to have to now program my own studies, analyze my own data. I used to just sending it off to a partner. And so it's a challenge, I think, for us also, but, and you deal with this, I've seen it on LinkedIn, the MSA process. We have one financial services client that they said yes nearly 2 years ago, and we are in legal MSA hell.
How much has that cost you guys?
Yes, I mean, I'm just kind of sad, exactly, yeah. But how much does it cost them in opportunity loss? Because
Absolutely.
if they're not getting their data back for 8 weeks because they haven't been able to adapt.
You know, you both mentioned, you know, insights departments and the fact that they're under-resourced or, you know, sort of not thought of the same way. But how about not insights departments? What do you think about sort of the other groups who are buying or, you know, who you're pointed at in terms of the future? Armen, I mean, I know you're trying to
Yeah,
work
I
on
was just
that.
going to comment. I remember sitting at a conference again. I was 3 years ago, and there were 5 or 6. I think Meryl was the moderator. You might have been there or not. But I was in Utah, and the question was, there were again 5 heads of insight of different brands, and the question was whose budgets are increasing, and no hands went up, right? And the question was whose budgets are decreasing, and half the hands went up. And the other half, their budgets were sustainable. And that was during a great bull market. Right. So to your point, Ryan, I think the hardest thing is selling to the insights teams. I think over time, right, because it's very hard to prove ROI from that spend. And it's just, I don't think those budgets are going to change or the buying capability will change.
Yeah. Well, you quickly realize you're not selling software, you're selling change management.
You're selling change management.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So like I've seen significant growth from fintech because there is no legacy. There is no we've always done it this way, and they're growing so quickly and they're so well funded, and it's like, oh my gosh, you can help me make my ads better? This is awesome. Thank you. Like, and so to Steve's question, it isn't an insights person, it's a head of product marketing, a chief marketing officer. We have a customer, SoFi, and the CMO and the head of brand were our customer. And she called me like 2 weeks ago, and she's like, all right, I need to hire a head of insights. Do you know anybody? But that, I mean, they went public. They're $1 billion company. I mean, it's like, that's a pretty big trajectory to go on to then be like, all right, now we need to bring in somebody.
But one of the things that's interesting about like fintech as an example compared to, let's say, more traditional CPG is that, you know, the number of buyers that are within those groups are multiples of the number of buyers who are in traditional insights departments. I mean, you know, you'll see, you know, 50 different faces versus the 10 same people that you've worked with all the time at McDonald's as an example.
Yeah.
So,
And they're a lot more decentralized. Like, so even a business like Facebook, I mean, everybody's embedded into product teams. So there is no like global capability, whatever, every company uses their own vernacular, center of excellence or whatever the thing might be. So it's I mean, it's a growth challenge. It's a nightmare for sales teams, but I actually love that because they're embedding the talent into teams close to the problems. And I think that's a great deployment of consumer
I
insight.
think it's easier for sales teams, to be honest. We account map on accounts. Just like
Good
we
point.
account map, I'm like, you know what, I can sell 12 licenses here instead of one huge license. I don't have to talk to one decision maker.
So what do you think about TAM? Because it's the same conversation.
Yeah.
You know, what do you like? What's your sense of the market that we live in and how big it is?
I mean, you've kind of redefined it.
I view TAM very differently. I never talk about 40 billion. I view.
You just said we're for creators, right?
Yeah,
Like,
we're-
what does that mean?
So I believe creators are underserved.
Okay.
Operations people, finance people, media people get tons of data at their
It's
fingertips.
a broad.
People, I think creators are the future of the world. They need data to help them make better decisions to inspire. And so we're anchoring our business at creators. It doesn't have to be TikTok people. I mean, I view insights people as creators because they're part of the process. But the TAM I see is these big behemoth incumbents, and I'm sorry if I'm offending anybody in the room, they're shrinking and all the small technology businesses are starting to, it's like this inverse. And so the TAM is becoming digital quickly.
Can't see it. Oh, okay. Sorry.
Rachel, we got you. I view the TAM sort of differently than just one big bucket because I think what used to be businesses doing, let's just pick on somebody, late stage basis testing
Right.
is now a bunch of iterative learning loops that they go through. And so that the digital market is becoming a lot bigger, I think. So I don't know what percentage you threw out, but I would be shocked if in 5 years the Suzys and Zappis and Tolunas of the world aren't a much bigger percentage of the share.
It is, and I think even if you track SMR, I think you look at the rate of growth of tech-enabled.
It's huge.
Is
It's the fastest.
50% of projects last year, according to SMR.
That's right.
Yeah, it was interesting because in Q1 of this year, we had a significant amount of RFIs. We didn't have that. I mean, obviously our brand has grown, but we didn't have that this time last year. And it's huge companies. Now, some of what they're asking for is a full service market research agency.
Yeah, for sure.
Right.
We've had to kind of write not applicable. And for some, they did the RFI process and went back to the incumbents. And they need to for another year because to Ryan's point, I'm not selling technology, I'm selling to change management. And that's real, they're not ready for it, but at least they're now understanding. So the next year, as this comes around again.
I think what we're saying is you think about the global kind of these global shifts, which is the world is becoming a lot more data driven. That regardless of where you sit, whatever team, whatever department, you are expected to make decisions off of real data, right? And that is a huge tailwind for this category. And secondly, I think the world is becoming a lot more customer obsessed, right?
Yes.
Every brand and organization wants to build the best experience. Hence, how do you then enable your entire team, your every single department to put the customer in the center of every decision? Those are great things, and that's why that shift is happening with tech-enabled. That's why Suzy is winning. That's why Zappi is winning, because the whole world is moving that way.
But go ahead.
What's the number?
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. What's the number for town?
Start around and just throw a number out there.
25 billion is what I'm attacking.
25 billion is what you're attacking.
What I'm attacking personally.
Right. What's the
I'm
TAM?
focused though. I'm not trying to be everything to everybody. We test ads
Okay.
and new products.
Right.
And shopper
Okay, got it.
marketing. We do those three things. We do nothing else.
And how about verticals?
Verticals, QSR, telco, CPG, and tech. Nothing else.
Okay.
Got it. Armen, what do you?
That's a thing that isn't. It took us a while to be like, where is product market fit? Now let's go
Sure.
focus on it.
Yeah.
I think a lot of businesses try to be.
We think of it at 60 billion plus. We think of 60 billion plus, and I think for the most part that represents their enterprise budgets. I think there's a lot of opportunity for growth because again, who has customer data on their fingertips? Very few people in the company. There's all that shift, right? All that potential for I think for our category to go after.
We call it 50 billion, so I wonder where you get that to 10 from.
Well, so it's if that's a question, then I'll say if you think of various different reports, again, we triangulate this based on like public information, right? So I think Cint did a phenomenal job in their filing. Qualtrics has kind of done a great job in their filing. So I think you look at SMR and kind of combine those things. Most of those are actually bigger than 60.
Yeah, for sure. They've expanded the market, I think, customer experience. And
There's something you said that it really resonates with me about people getting their hands on the data. It's one of the reasons why the future of insights departments keeps me awake at night. Like, are we going to enable business? This is why I'm obsessed with creators. Are we going to enable the creator to get the data they need in stride? Or are we going to say, no, we're the only ones who can do regression models. Sorry, you're just not smart enough. And I think if we do that, somebody else is going to eat everybody's lunch in this room.
yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I look at it completely differently. I say, data's everywhere. We don't even, we can't even see where it is and where we actually could be working. I put the TAM at probably 160 to 200 billion because I think it's 80, documented, and it's probably 2x that, if not 3x that. And the reason why is that we think about
And you're looking at qual and quant.
qual and quant. I'm looking at, how people use information. I'm thinking about all the mid-sized companies that don't even get serviced all that well, but need information desperately. So, the $1 billion, $2 billion, you referenced it before, and you could even take that down to the $500 million enterprise. And I also think that data is in different places now than it was a decade or two ago. They're already getting tastes of it.
Yes.
And when you get that taste, you want more of it because you realize you can action off it so much better. I just think it's how do we get out there to actually make that happen and provide it to them? And the tools are getting better. Let's face it.
Well, that's the thing. Like, these tools aren't dumb anymore. They used to be and I was at the IEX a few weeks ago. There's a lot of great innovation. I don't think we have a technology problem in this industry at all.
Yeah.
People process problem, big time.
Yes.
Yeah.
I actually am with Steve. I think it's about $100 billion, maybe by 2025. Both quant and qual. I think a lot of it's going to be more tech-enabled. Like right now, we're like 53% is tech-enabled. So I think that will only continue to grow. And I actually think that might be conservative if we really factor in all these different aspects of data collection and insights. So it's 10
Q&A time.
minutes left.
Yeah.
Yeah, questions, comments? Oh, sure.
Where's the mic? Oh, right there. Do you want to get it, Carrie?
Yeah, one thing we didn't do is there's mics set up on either side
Thank
of the room.
you.
Carrie's going to be the MC.
Yeah, if
she
you all
said.
could come to the mic and ask your questions so that everybody can hear.
So
Great
firstly, I
conversation,
thought this
guys.
was great. I think that there are so many important things that you guys touched on, from scalability for companies that are newer and how you create culture, all the way down to, you know, the accountability throughout our industry for the participant experience. I'm going to be talking about a little bit. So my question around that is, you know, how do we as this group actually start getting that feedback up and then enforced, right? You know, so the dilemma is always that, well, if one panel company won't do it, then another one will. And, you know, the experiences just remain so pitiful, and someone's going to take it. So, you know, to give an example, on last week when I was writing this, I had a potential client call who is a streaming company who wanted us to do an entire project for free, including the incentives and the sourcing of the participants and the analysis. And obviously they're a much bigger company than I am, as a pilot for 500 people for a, you know, a 45-minute survey. And so, you know, besides simply saying no, you know, what else do you say to that person that's like, what you're asking for is insane, and we shouldn't be asking that of anyone in this room. So as those of you that are have been around this.
I have a definite opinion on free stuff.
I want to hear it.
It's no. You got to have skin in the game. I mean, they have to invest something. These guys might differ with me, but you got to invest something to like get the results that you want. Like, because if it's free, they're not going to pay attention to it. They're going to say, "Oh, I'll get to it when I get to it." But
and it's poorly designed, and it's so cheeky that, you know, dangling the carrot of the big project
I don't buy
after
that
the.
at all.
It's a phenomenon. It tells you how bad of a place the industry in when that's the question.
Yeah, that's true.
I think,
Isn't it funny how you're always a partner when that question comes up?
I'm thinking about it. I'm like, it's a phenomenal question, but the reality is that's almost what the industry has built as the expectation.
Yeah, right.
So that question is a real question. It's a real life question, but
True.
that tells you kind of what, you know, how bad it really is, and to a certain degree what the long term looks like.
Yeah, right. And you know, combined with the expectation of low participation rates and everything else, that it's like, how much lower do you want the bar to go? You know, so I would I guess challenge everyone in this room to sort of like, how can we collectively start saying stop?
But that is the issue. Is if it's not one sample company, maybe it's another. But if
Yeah.
it's not one market research company, then it's another.
I think Synth can do it.
But like, why would we do a 45-minute internet survey?
I think Synth can do it. I don't know. I think they're in position to do it.
I'll be pinging all of you after this to reach out with more individual questions, because it was a great panel.
Anytime.
Thank you.
Yes, yeah, thank you, Gary.
Other questions?
Really
Hi,
bright.
Bruce
It
Friend,
is.
Screen Engine ASI. We test a ton of stuff for the streaming services. We test feature-length films now because of COVID. We've moved about 70% of our screen. Even now that people are back in the theaters, we can do them in the theaters, a lot of our clients are staying online. We try to make events out of these things. We try to, like, in a way, and I don't know, you could say, well, maybe that's not good quality, whatever, but we have no choice. That's our business. Like, we can't make that test a 5-question test, you know, so, and that's not going away, and content is this, our business is booming because there's more and more content, but we're having harder and harder times filling our studies. And I have my panel, and we actually do better filling from our own panel than we do from the ones we source, but we treat them differently. So I think a part of it is, again, we mentioned about how you treat your respondents. That really is key. And the problem is too, and I you know, thank you P&G for being here. We need a conference that says, this is the coolest conference in the world, Con, to get clients here, because I see SampleCon and they're like, what the hell is SampleCon and why would I go to that? And that's a big problem because the clients, they're the ones driving this, really. I'm not gonna say no to a client because they wanna do a 25-minute segmentation survey. I'm gonna try to do that study.
But sorry.
And I can't, you know, it's like, that's our business. So there's got to be another solution. We just can't say, oh, we're only going to do 5-minute surveys now, and they have to all be mobile enabled or whatever.
The question is, are you going to have people to survey in 5 years to do that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That are real, that are representative of the U.S. population? And it sounds like in your case, there's probably some fun experiences behind it. So
That helps,
if I'm you, I'm
sure.
paying a premium incentive and keeping those people engaged. But I worry, like, if I go to like smaller markets, like pick one, an African market. We have to do work in Mongolia. We've already burned through that population. We're fortunate here in the United States where there's a ton of people that we can go through.
I think it's also a communication issue. Like, it's a communication to the person who's participating in the survey, and it's a communication to the client. I mean, there's a fine. I mean, it sounds so basic, but that really is kind of, and then obviously the economics of it. But the economics, I feel like, is easier to deal with than the communication of setting expectations with the client and also with the person who might want to participate.
I mean, I think Armen sort of said it before, which is that, you know, we provide a real value to this process, and that value should be respected and it should be paid for appropriately. And frankly, most clients do. I mean, I think that clients tend to be good partners, but if we don't give them the narrative of what's really going on in our world and let them in on it, then they really can't react properly, and therefore we all wind up getting the short end of it. So yeah, it's on us, but it's at the same time, we've got to make sure that we're doing what we can do to make it work. And you know, Bruce, listen, I do a lot of work in healthcare where also survey length is an issue, or you know, just sort of the entire engagement is quite long. You know, and I think you just have to, you know, think about how we're incentivizing and how we value those people effectively, and make them feel they are our partners in the research. I think that's the win.
My
Client too, because
Agreed.
I can't tell Amazon, they want shorter timelines than even our linear TV clients used to want. And I can't tell them, no, we're doing studies all over the world with them.
Well, we've,
And that's a growth part of my business. So it's like, but they need to be here. They need to hear like, you shouldn't be doing this.
But I think also we need to look at sample sizes, which is controversial for an industry built on how much volume can I sell. And I actually remember when I went to Toluna, John Bremer sat on a stage like this at a conference saying, you don't need sample sizes that large, you only need 300 completes. And I was like, dude, I have a target based on how much sample I can sell. And so I think if we flip the whole thing on its head, do you need 2,000 completes? What is statistical
It just
significance?
depends on the study.
So in which case, don't spend on 2,000 completes, spend on 300 and massively increase that incentive so they're paid what they're worth. And so I think sample size needs to be looked at, not just incentive.
But to Bruce's point, we do need to find a way to engage more of the buy side. I remember there was a thing that was in New York City, a couple brands showed up, and I left halfway through the meeting because we spent the entire meeting discussing if it was convenience or
Oh, I do remember.
it was the most bullshit posturing meeting I've ever been to. And I had 3 clients with me who were like, why'd you bring me here, dude? And you know, so we have to find a way to get to common ground and then have a discussion of where value is created. That's why I do think some industry work needs to be done on this. I'm personally down to go to bat and pay more. I think that's the only way to preserve the population taking these.
If you do it with smaller samples, then you could.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Yeah, we can hear you. You're good.
I can hear you, but
So on the buy side, and lucky enough to be coming here I've only missed one last year, COVID, so I had to put my hand down. How much of this, though, is a reflection of what we've done in the past that led us to this moment? And what I mean by that specifically is embracing the technologies, and I am one that has not done that, I'll be the first to say that. But we commoditize the respondent, but then sit up here and say we need to treat them with respect. Now, I want to be a champion for the respondent. I think I am, but I'm also a guy that does 20-minute studies, that does a 25-minute segmentation, that does that conjoint because that's what the analysis needs. Suzy, not Suzy, but at Suzy, I forget your name, I'm sorry.
Katie.
I call her Suzy.
I get called Suzy all day.
I wish I didn't have a demographic because I don't trust the integrated numbers.
That's the point.
I also use that as a validation point to identify that they are who they say they are, and we get the right individuals. But I've also seen an individual pass through a marketplace, into an API, into a reseller, into another marketplace, and finally end up in the survey that they're taking. All 5 of those members are in this room today. Every person in the room then got a cut of that incentive, got a cut of that CPI. So part of this is we can point upstream, and we're coaching clients. We are. 15 minutes is now a long survey for us, and that is an astonishing statement for Burke.
Yeah.
So we're fighting that battle, but I think we need to be a bit more reflective too on what we've done to put us in this position.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Less of a question, more of a statement.
Yes.
I agree that we brought Gen Pop sample down to $3 in 2008, and everybody was willing to spend $8 on it. It was like,
You hurt yourself.
SSI doesn't exist anymore, so I can call them out. SSI did it and everybody just followed. That's what happened.
Yeah.
We didn't need to do that all those years ago, and we've commoditized it.
Brad, and I think you're unique also as a company. I think you are doing your part. I really don't, again, we've reflected on this a lot, and we don't find a way where the end client solves this or all the people in the middle solve it as you described. I think it's a supply issue. I think supply has to solve it. We think the only place where it can start and end is supply, and if we look at a year ago, Q2, where there was a real shortage of supply.
Yeah.
Right? The types of conversations you were having and how that flowed upstream was very different. So this is
That was brutal.
economics 101, supply, demand. No supply, it's very easy for you to, Bruce, to go and say, sorry, no supply, right?
Yeah.
Because you're just doing what you've done for a long time and you're doing a great job at it. So this is a supply side challenge to be solved.
But you're going to need help paying a different acquisition cost and keeping because your business is how much does it cost you to acquire a panelist and how many surveys do they take? I would imagine those are your.
Recalibrate sample sizes to be, what is statistical significance and hit that sample size, not.
Let's get one more question out.
This is fun.
Hey, thanks everybody. This has been a great conversation. I'm actually going to do a little pivot off of this to back towards the beginning of the conversation where y'all were talking about staffing. And so we talked about staffing, some of the challenges and the increase in salaries. I'm curious to hear from you all how you deal with the current staff. So one of our challenges is like we have current staff that are there that are at a certain level, right? And then to acquire somebody, it needs to be, $10,000 or $20,000 more than the people that are already there. But if you raise everybody up, you have a challenge. So does anybody have any kind of like tips or experience with how they manage that so the people who have been busting their ass already there don't feel like, well, I should just leave, right, and go somewhere else to get more money?
That's Steve's biggest problem.
Thanks, Armen.
We actually
I can.
Because of you.
We make it so every employee has 4 money conversations a year. They have to have a quarterly growth conversation. We bought this system called Radford, which actually a lot of industry companies are in, where you can benchmark salaries for different roles, and they keep that data relatively up to date, so that way it's objective. And then each employee has goals, and if they hit the goals, they're entitled to up to 2 salary increases a year. We have, very unpopularly, and I've had to come away from this, said we don't do inflationary raises. We give raises off of performance. That statement's been deleted because of the state of inflation. that worked a couple years ago. It doesn't work anymore. But those are some of the things. But there is a point. We lost a sales rep to somebody whose company's on this stage, and the amount of money that person was being offered just didn't make sense for us. And so sometimes you just have to say, you know what, we wish you the best of luck. I think you should. I like her.
Talking about the development of your people is your internal training programs, right?
Yes.
Because people don't, sometimes you can pull people in who have no skill base, but a great attitude or are willing to learn. And you can send them for basically no money to Coursera courses. You can pay for their time, you can pay for the course. So you're investing in them. And they are seeing not just, that they're meeting sales goals or whatever, but they're meeting their own milestones in their development of the career. And so if you turn that into something that is like foundational in your institution, I think the investment goes a lot farther and people are more likely to have conversations about leaving. It also creates a culture of accountability from one person down to the next person to bring that person up, and so on and so forth. And it's worked really well for us.
I love that. You just keep adding more time. Do you guys want us to keep yapping?
No.
I just got to tell a quick story. 30 years ago, one of my best friends and I were talking about people working for us, and we took a $1 bill and we split it in half, and we each have a half of that $1 bill, and we have to give the other half to the person when we stop paying people what they're worth. Meaning we try to take advantage of them, or we try to get away with the lowest amount. And it's sort of the opposite of what the question was, right? Which is, how do you pay up, I guess, the people who you may be hiring? So what I would probably say in reverse is I'm actually really trying not to hire people for more money than they're worth. Like, really trying to keep the balance in terms of, yeah, if the market goes out of whack, I may have to correct somewhere along the way. But the truth is that I'd like to hope that I'm paying my people properly. And if I'm not, I need to make those adjustments anyway. So, I think you probably, or probably what I'm trying to say is I'm trying to simplify it versus complicate it.
Yeah.
And I know it's not perfect, but it's the best way for me to approach, 1,500 people who are all seeing offers and opportunities and hearing about things that are out there. And then, of course, there's always making the case that it's not always about the money. It's about other things, too.
Yeah. We had to, obviously we raised our Series D last year, and we had to go and hire 30 salespeople. So I had to do it. I have to pay it. I have a duty to the VCs to spend what they gave us, essentially. And so we had to go above market rate to get people to leave their current companies. And somebody asked a question, but I did, there were 3 leaders where I'm like, they're going to start getting paid a lot less than the people who are reporting to them, so I'm going to have to raise them.
Yeah.
So in the middle of October, I just went to our CFO and I was
kinda
like, there
believe in
are
that,
3 people
though.
who I have to increase their salaries immediately.
And you factor that into your model.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
That was part of the
Yeah.
funding. Like these 3 have to have an
But
increase.
this is the interesting piece of
And they were worth it, so.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And look, I think that you need to do what you have to do for what's right for your business.
Yeah.
But this is also the difference that exists within this room
Yeah.
of companies that are VC-backed, companies that are PE-backed, and companies that are privately held,
Yeah.
and what you actually can do based on what your criteria are. Because, you do have to produce potentially, you do need to keep track of your financials, and that's it.
I think we're going to wrap up. Thank you, guys. This was
Thanks,
wonderful.
everybody.
Fun. Yeah, appreciate it.
All right.